Welcome to the Minnesota Gambling Control Board Gambling Manager Seminar Review Sessions. Some general notes regarding these review sessions and tips moving forward. The sessions are optional and are not required for Gambling Manager licensure. The sessions are also not intended to be a replacement for the Gambling Manager Seminar class, which has much more comprehensive information. Rather, the sessions focus on some of the more impactful items to consider when getting started in your gambling operation and on historically troublesome areas of compliance. Each review session corresponds to roughly 1/3 of the Gambling Manager Seminar class, and each session recording can be briefly paused if needed to allow for further consideration of, or even further research of, an elusive topic. At the end of each session, some quiz questions will be both asked and answered. Note that the questions for the quiz come from the current day's review material or simply from the Gambling Manager Seminar class at large. A very important reminder: if there is ever any gray area in your mind as to the answer to a given question stemming from your gambling operation, it is essential to reach out to your county's compliance or licensing specialist for a definitive answer. We all know from daily life that assumptions sometimes prove incorrect, and in the case of charitable gambling, incorrect assumptions can and often do lead to reimbursements of monies back to the gambling account, citations, and/or other repercussions. Organizations that are regularly in contact with their Gambling Control Board specialists, almost without exception, more effectively stay compliant with gambling statute and rule, meaning fewer citations or other sanctions, and also meaning generally less eventful or troublesome compliance audits and inspections. Review session number 1. Today's topics include best resources for new gambling managers, deposits of gambling proceeds, who may play, who can and cannot participate in charitable gambling, and cash shortages. Best resources for new gambling managers. The Gambling Manager Seminar class itself is a great resource for you. You can go back into the class and into the section headers and other topical lists on the left side of the screen at your convenience during the seminar class and when taking the seminar test. Since access to the seminar class is not restricted, some even access it again months down the line, though information from some of the other resources shown below tends to be more readily accessible. A series of hard copy materials would have been provided to you ahead of the seminar. We encourage you to review those materials when time permits and to hang on to them to serve as useful reference points moving forward. The Minnesota Lawful Gambling Manual is another tremendous resource. Some even refer to it as the Bible of charitable gambling. The manual can be downloaded in its entirety or by chapter at the web address shown. Once downloaded, the manual can be used electronically or taken on a jump drive for printing and 3-hole punching at a local printing store. Your compliance and licensing specialists at the Gambling Control Board are another great resource. While they cannot help with the Gambling Manager Seminar exam, they can certainly provide valuable assistance with most any other of your organization's gambling-related needs. The main website of the Gambling Control Board is another useful tool. We recommend that organizations bookmark the site and check back frequently to see the latest developments in charitable gambling in Minnesota. The Gaming News, a publication put together by our agency and emailed out to gambling managers and CEOs on a quarterly basis, is also very informative about the latest trends and developments with Minnesota charitable gambling. Past editions of the Gaming News are archived on the Gambling Control Board website. Finally, the reporting forms sent in to our agency each month can be a great resource. A file showing samples of the 3 main forms sent in, Forms LG100A, LG100C, and LG100F, can be obtained by downloading at the web address shown here. Should your organization use gambling management software, a comparable version of these forms will be accessible there. One important tip for gambling managers and for CEOs is to monitor the values being sent across to the Gambling Control Board on these forms each month, looking for patterns. If a value or two suddenly change significantly, it can be a sign that something is amiss in the gambling operation. Let's move on to our next major topic for today, deposits of gambling proceeds. The first important requirement to understand is that deposits of gambling proceeds must be processed at the bank within 4 business days of the close of the gambling game or session. For example, if a pull tab game were closed on a Monday, or if a raffle drawing were to occur on a Monday, then the deposit of proceeds for the game or the raffle drawing would need to be processed at the bank by Friday, the 4th business day. Most groups get in the habit of making deposits at least 2 or 3 times per week to ensure that they don't violate this statute. Note that for electronic gaming, the same 4 business day window applies. However, the triggers are different. There are 2 main triggers that start the 4 business day clock ticking for electronics. The first of those is that each and every time that the combined electronic gaming net receipts exceeds $2,000, a new deposit is required. If on the 10th of the month, for example, the combined electronic net receipts for the month finally surpassed $2,000 and hit $2,215, then the 4 business day clock starts ticking at that point. Note that the amount of an electronics deposit must always equate to an exact range of full days of activity. In other words, no partial day deposits are allowed. When gathering electronic gaming receipts for deposit, always start by resetting the cash bank to its initial starting value. The remaining cash is what is then deposited. This approach ensures timely detection if gambling funds have gone missing, and even helps detect if extra funds are unexpectedly present. The second and final trigger for electronic gaming deposits is the end of the month. A month-end deposit is always required, regardless of whether other electronic gaming deposits have occurred during the month. This month-end deposit must occur within the first 4 business days of the following month. A final aspect of gambling deposits to consider is the deposit tickets themselves, which have very specific requirements. First, include the date of the deposit itself, and itemize the amounts if including proceeds from more than one game or one type of gambling. If depositing proceeds from session-based games, such as a raffle or bingo, include the date of the drawing or session. If depositing for pull tab, tip board, or paddle wheel bar-coded games, be sure to include the serial number of the game. If your organization has more than one active gambling site, then a 3-digit identifier issued by the Gambling Control Board or an abbreviated name of the site is required. For electronic gaming deposits, be sure to include a date range of full days of activity represented. Finally, while it is fine to include and itemize proceeds for multiple gambling types or games for a given site, proceeds from multiple sites should never be included in the same deposit. Whatever your approach, it is very important to ensure that each and every deposit ticket is clear and legible. Today's third major topic is who can and cannot participate in gambling. This who may play and may not play chart is an invaluable resource in determining that. The form is available for download on the main page of the Gambling Control Board website. It is important to post a copy of the form at each of your gambling sites, and further to ensure that the gambling staff there are using it to prevent illegal gambling. Gambling managers and CEOs should also have a copy of the chart at the ready in case they get questions along these lines. That said, due to the seriousness of illegal gambling, should the chart not clearly address any of the questions that you or your gambling staff encounter, it is essential that you reach out to Gambling Control. While going through all of the scenarios listed on this chart is beyond the scope of this review, We will go ahead and go through a few of them now. The situation for the gambling manager of the organization, the lessor or bar owner of the premises, and for persons under age 18 is actually pretty straightforward. The gambling manager of an organization cannot participate in gambling of any kind at any of their sites. The bar owner of a given site cannot participate in gambling of any kind at their own site. And persons under age 18 are not allowed to participate in any forms of gambling except for a couple of very specific cases that are outlined in footnote 4 on the bottom of this chart. For most other persons, whether they can participate in gambling at a particular site depends on whether they are involved in conduct of gambling at the site, and in some cases whether they have worked that particular day. It is important to point out that the word conduct here has a very broad meaning. As per the first footnote at the bottom of this chart, conduct includes selling or redeeming any games or equipment, auditing games or handling money, spinning a paddle wheel, conducting inventory verification, completing bingo occasion records, and selecting or announcing bingo numbers. That said, it is important to understand that this list is not considered exhaustive. Whenever in doubt about whether the actions of a given individual in the gambling operation constitute conduct, it is essential to reach out to gambling control. By way of example, let's use the chart to answer a couple of common questions about the conduct of gambling. First, whether those involved in conduct of gambling at a given site can participate in raffles at the site, and second, whether they can participate in bingo at the site. As shown in the blue circles here, such persons can participate in raffles at the site in all cases, but can only participate in bingo on days that they have not been working. The fourth and final topic for today is cash shortages. Some degree of cash shortage in a gambling operation is normal and acceptable due to human error. That said, monitoring of cash shortages in a gambling operation is required by statute and rule. In order to promptly know if cash shortages become excessive, as this can be a sign of theft or other problems in the gambling operation. Importantly, Minnesota gambling statute establishes for each gambling site an annual cash shortage cap equal to 0.3% of the site's gross receipts. Anything exceeding this amount on an annual basis is a serious concern and will need to be reimbursed. It is also important to note that many gambling sites average a significantly lower percentage, meaning that percentages just under this threshold, while technically not unlawful, may still indicate potential theft or other concerns. It is for this reason that monitoring cash shortages monthly is essential in any gambling operation. The cash shortage form that you see on screen here from the GCB website is a very useful tool in tracking cash shortages for your gambling sites on a monthly basis. While the form or its equivalent is required for booth and for owned gambling sites, it is still useful and recommended for tracking cash shortages in bar operations. In particular, by tracking cash shortages at gambling sites regularly, organizations can get accustomed to a normal pattern and thus readily identify if and when a given month's shortages differ significantly from it. This in turn can help detect and remediate theft or other concerns that may have surfaced at a given site. Before we dig a bit into how to use the form, a reminder first that cash shortages in a bar operation are the responsibility of the bar, while the cash shortages in a booth operation or at an owned site are the responsibility of the gambling organization. This is primarily because in a bar operation, shortages tend to be due to bar employee mistakes, while in the other types of operation, shortages tend to be due to gambling organizations' employee mistakes. Since who is responsible for cash shortages depends on the type of operation at a site, so too does how to address the cash shortages at the site. In practice, bar operation cash shortages for a given month are deducted from that month's rent check. If, for example, the calculated rent for a bar were $500 and the site had $50 in cash shortages for the month, then the actual rent paid to the bar would be $450. Booth and own sites are handled differently though. For these sites, cash shortages are not subtracted from rent, but rather are required to be tracked monthly using the cash shortage form shown on screen or its equivalent. While no monetary action is required on a monthly basis, tracking it in this way is required in order to promptly detect theft or other concerns in the operation and address them. At the end of the state fiscal year, then, is when the final determination is made as to whether the 0.3% of gross receipts cap mentioned earlier has been exceeded. If the answer to that is yes, then the organization is required to reimburse the excess amount back to the gambling account by July 20th. For example, if combined cash shortages for the year at a booth or own site were $1,100 and 0.3% of the gross receipts at the site for the year amounted to $1,000, then the gambling organization would need to reimburse $100 back to the gambling account by July 20th. And now, some tips on monthly completion of the cash shortage worksheet form itself for a given site. First, you will want to have the total combined gross receipts for the site handy. This can be readily obtained from Form LG100A for the site on line 11A. Next, you will need to know the combined cash shortages for the site. This is located on line 22 of Form LG100A. And now for today's review session quiz. A reminder that the questions for the quiz come either from material discussed today or from the Gambling Manager class at large. As you work your way through the quiz, feel free to pause the recording so that you have time to fully consider or even research a given question before its answer is then provided. Good luck! Question number 1. True or false? A pull-tab game cannot be put into play if the flare does not have a barcode or serial number sticker on it.
Answer: true. As part of unpacking pull-tab games, gambling staff should ensure that the barcode serial number sticker is present, and also that the serial number on the sticker itself matches both the serial number on the tickets for the game, as well as the serial number listed on the shipping invoice. If any discrepancies this way, the game is considered defective and should not be put into play. Assuming such a discrepancy is found prior to the game being put in play, the next step is to contact your distributor to report a potentially defective game. Alternatively, if this type of discrepancy is discovered after a game has already been put in play, take the game out of play immediately, then contact the Minnesota Department of Revenue for next steps. Question number 2. Who is responsible for cash shortages in a bar operation? Also consider who is responsible for cash shortages at a site that is owned or has a booth. Answer number 1. The bar owner, or lessor, is responsible for all cash shortages occurring in a bar operation. These monthly shortages are generally deducted directly from the monthly rent check. Answer number 2. Because it is organization employee mistakes that generally lead to cash shortages at an owned or booth site, it is the organization that is accountable for cash shortages. Question number 3. For what amount of pull tab, tip board, or bingo prize must a prize receipt be completed? Answer: prizes of $100 or more always require a prize receipt. Additionally, for pull tab games in which a last sale prize is offered, a prize receipt is required to be issued for the awarding of the last sale prize, provided it is $20 or more.
Question number 4. Who pays linked bingo prize amounts of $600 or more, and when? Answer: the linked bingo provider. In virtually all other charitable gambling prize winning situations, the organization ultimately issues payment. In the case of linked bingo, however, because the games are shared across the state, Large payouts of $600 or more are paid by the linked bingo provider directly to the winning player. Payment is typically issued within a few days of the win. $600 payouts are relevant for a couple of other reasons in electronic gaming. The first of those is that any and all electronic gaming payouts of $600 or more require that prize receipts are completed. The second reason is that in the specific case of progressive electronic pull tag games, payouts of $600 or more are not immediately paid by the organization to the player. Rather, the organization, often the gambling manager, connects with the player soon after the win to complete a required winner verification form, after which the organization then has 4 business days to issue the payment to the player. Obviously, there is some complexity to issuing payment for the various types of wins in electronic gaming. Fortunately, the electronic gaming systems are programmed to clearly spell out on-screen instructions for the gambling staff on how to handle the various situations. Question number 5. In what 4 cities does the Gambling Control Board have offices? Answer: the Gambling Control Board has offices in Fergus Falls, Hibbing, Mankato, and Roseville. That concludes review session number 1 for the Gambling Manager Seminar. Thanks for listening.